Myself Padmaja, Associate Professor, Department of CSE, Institute of Aeronautical Engineering, Hyderabad. Today we are going to discuss about user-defined functions in C language. Now, first of all, what is a function? A function contains a block of code which performs a specific task. So, we can say that a function contains a set of instructions for performing a single task which is enclosed within the parenthesis. Now, the functions are supporting the modular programming concept. That means for whenever a large project is divided into a number of modules, each module is converted into a function or is written in a function, and it supports your modular programming approach. Now, coming to the advantages of function, first advantage is code reusability. That means you write the code once and you can reuse multiple times. That means a function can be written once and it can be called multiple times. Next advantage is called you can develop an application using the modular programming aspect where each module is called a function. The third advantage is it is easy to debug the program and the complexity is also reduced and the number of lines of code will be reduced and you can do code optimization also. That means you need not write very lengthy code for the complete application. You can divide the code into multiple modules or functions, and which is easily your debugging will be easy for it, and also code optimization can be done. So these are the advantages of functions. Now, coming to the types of functions, functions are basically of two types. One is called the library functions or predefined function, and the second one is called user-defined function. Now, if the function already exists or already included by the C compilers, those are known as the standard functions or predefined functions, and the functions we write for different purposes, those are called user-defined functions. Now you can see over here, the library functions are normally predefined and they are declared inside the header files. All the predefined functions comes with the header files. Then the body inside the .dll files, it is available. Simply you have to use it like printf, scanf, these examples. These are the examples for your library functions. Whereas user-defined functions are created by the user and you are writing for doing multiple tasks. So it reduces the complexity of the program if you are using your functional approach or modular approach. Now, what do you mean by the standard library functions? So the first category of functions are called the standard library functions or predefined functions. Now, the standard library functions are the built-in functions which are used for handling different tasks like string handling functions are there, date and time functions are there, mathematical functions are there, and so on. And a bunch of functions are under a header file. They are categorized into different header files. So whenever you want to use any predefined function, you have to include that header file in your program. So the printf is a standard example is the printf function is a standard library function which is used for sending the formatted output to the screen. And this function, as it is related to the standard output device, so it is available in the header file stdio.h standard input output header file. Similarly, you will know about the scanf, fscanf, fprintf, these functions or getchar, these functions are related to your stdio.h because this function deal with input or output operations. So based on the need or what type of operations you are doing, you have to use that particular header file. Suppose you are working with your string functions, then you have to include the string.h header file. Similarly, whenever you are working with your mathematical functions like trigonometric function, power function, exponential function, and so on, you have to include math.h header file because the group of similar functions are stored under a header file. Now, our main concern is to how to write a user-defined function. Now, user-defined functions a user can write for doing a specific task, and such type of functions are called user-defined function. So, first see what is the syntax for writing a function. Now, any user-defined function will have a return data type followed by the function name, and the function may take a number of arguments or parameters. These are also known as arguments or parameters of the function. So you can pass 0 or more arguments or parameters according to the need. Now, then a set of statements will be written. This is called the body of the function, and the function may return some value to the your calling function. So that time we will write a return set statement. So the return statement is also optional. So every function returns some kind of value that is called the return type. So return type followed by function name, followed by the number of arguments or parameter, and then for doing a specific task we have to write down the body of the function. Now let us discuss about each one. So what is return type? A function may return a value. So the return type is nothing but the type of value the function that is going to return. If the function is going to return nothing, then you can simply write void f, void a function. So if the function is going to return some integer, then you have to write down int the function name. And if the function is going to return something, then you have to return some expression or some value which is required. Similarly, the function name is nothing but the name of the function that you have to give. Then parameters is nothing but a list of parameters which is required, or whenever you want to pass to the function, you can pass it as the number of arguments. And the function body is nothing but the collection of statements. So here the parameters are nothing but the placeholder, and these are treated as the local variables to the function. But the number of arguments or parameters are optional. Return statement is also optional. Whenever you do not explicitly mention the return also, the control automatically goes to the caller. Now, if you want to write a user-defined function, then what are the elements of a user-defined function? So, first of all, we have to declare a function. So, function declaration or prototype. Second element is you have to call the function. Third is you have to write the function definition and the return statement. These are the four important aspects while writing the functional programming approach. So, let us discuss one by one how to write a function declaration and prototype and what is the need of it. Now, function declaration or prototype writing is nothing but it is a process of telling to the compiler about a function name, that so and so type of function with some arguments and this return type, this kind of function exists in the program. So this is just an information given to the compiler about the function type that is existing in the program. So the actual body of the function can be written afterwards, but in the function prototype only just we write down the skeleton of the function type. Now we just write down what is the return type and followed by what is the name of the function and what parameter it takes. We just write down the skeleton function to give the information to the compiler that this kind of function exists in the program. Now, for example, we are writing a function prototype as int square of int of a. For example, here this square is nothing but the name of the function, and a is nothing but the argument or parameter. Then the square function returns integer type of value. So this is nothing but the return data type. So this is about the function prototype. Now in C language, a function can be placed. A program is a collection of functions, but the user-defined functions can be placed before main function or after main function. But if n number of functions are there in a program, but the program execution always starts with the main function, then the other functions are called from main and they are executed. So whenever you write your user-defined function definition above the main function, then function prototype is not needed. But when the function definition is there below main function, then function prototype is required. Now, the function prototype you can write inside the main function just before calling the function, or you can write down globally outside the function. Now, the next element of user-defined function is how to call the function. Now, normally before execution, a function must be called from a calling function. So, suppose there is a function called square function. That function we want to execute to find out the square of any rectangle, or square of any number or something. So we have to invoke that function. from the main function. Suppose a function square is there, so you have to invoke from main or you have to call it from main. So you have to write down square is the name of the function and x is nothing but the argument that or parameter that you are passing. And this function returns you some value that you have to store into another variable. Now you can see over here from the main function, we are calling this square function and this square function exists in below main function. So we are calling this function. After execution of this function, it is returning the value of the square of the number. So that is stored into the variable sqr. And then we can continue with the remaining part of the program. So there is always a relationship between the caller and callee. So here the calling function is our main function and the called function is our square function. The third aspect or the third element of the user-defined function is called function definition. That means how to write down the definition of the function. So the function definition provides actually the body of the function also. So we have to follow the same prototype which we have defined earlier. So the prototype already contains the return data type followed by function name and the list of parameters. So whenever you define the function, you have to keep that information same. What is the name of the function, what are the parameters and what is the return data type. Along with that, you have to write down the logic by writing a number of statements, what type of task you want to do, that is called a number of statements will be written, that is called the body of the function. And the last statement of any function is the return statement, whether it is implicitly done or explicitly written. But after execution of the function, the control automatically goes to the caller. So here the return value type is nothing but the type of value that the function is going to return. So if you are returning nothing, then you have to write down void as the valid data type in the functions. So if you are returning any integer or character or float, then you have to write down the return data type as int, char or float. And the return statement is whether it is optional, but if you do not want to write, then implicitly control returns to the caller. Otherwise, explicitly you want to return some value, then you can write down a return statement with some expression also. And this is the last step in doing your functional approach. While writing the function, the return statement is it returns the value and transfers the control to the caller. So you can write down return followed by the value. So you can see over here in this example, here main is the calling function and square function is called. So the last statement of the square function is return s, that means return the square of the number. So that value, so it is returning one value. That value is nothing but integer. So that's why the return data type is integer. So it is returning that integer value. So here you should declare one integer value. So here int sqr should be there. The sqr should be of integer because it is going to store one integer. So after receiving the value from your calling function, then you can continue with the rest of the program. Now, how many ways you can write a return statement? Return statement can be written 3 ways to control. One is called the simple return. The return statement doesn't return any value to the caller, but only control simply passed on to the caller. Second one is called return with an expression. So return statement returns the value of the expression to the caller. Or you can write return 0. This return statement indicates that the program is executed correctly without any error. So if it is -1, then you have to -1 normally indicate that the program has some error. But return 0 indicate that the program has executed successfully without any error. Now, let us understand one program and let us discuss about the different elements of writing a user-defined function. So, in the first step, here we are writing the first element is called function prototype. Here I want to find out square of a number. So, to find out the square of a number, I have a function like this, that int square int a. That means the name of the function is square. Int is the return type of value and a is the argument or parameter. So this information is simply given to the compiler that this type of function exists in the program. So it is just an information to the compiler as our function definition is below main function. So if you write down the square function definition above main, then this statement is not required. So as we have written the square function definition after main, so information must be given to the compiler. So this function prototype you can write locally or globally. So before function call, you can write down the function definition. It is just a good practice that you should write down the function definition that above main, that is globally. So in the global declaration area, we have written the function prototype. Now let us come to the main program or main function. In the main function, x is nothing but a number to whose square you want to calculate. So you first read the value of x, and the square function is going to calculate the square of this number x. So it is going to return the value of the square of the number which we are going to store using another variable called sqr. So that's why you declare another variable sqr over here. So here we are calling the function. This is the second step. First step is writing function prototype. Second step is call the function. So when the function is called, the control automatically goes to the calling function. Now in the calling function, we are passing the argument as x. This argument is known as the actual argument or actual parameter. So here the value of x is simply passed and it is stored into the parameter or argument a. So here a is called the formal argument. It works as a local variable also. So we are using the technique of call by value method. So where the value of x is a separate variable. The value of x is simply passed to a. So here x is known as the actual argument or actual parameter and a is known as the formal parameter or formal argument. And here x and a are two independent variables, and here we are using the technique call by value or pass by value technique here. So the value of x is passed into a. Now we have declared one local variable. S is known as a local variable here to compute the square of the number. So s is equal to a into a. That is, the number is multiplied with itself to find its square, and then we are returning the value of s. So the return statement is, the return value is of integer type. So we have written the return data type of this function as integer, and the return value must be received by the caller. So that's why the return value is received back by sqr variable. So after receiving the value, it prints the square of the number, so which is nothing but sqr value, and then the program stops. So this is a simple example to write a user-defined function square to find the square of a number. Thank you so much. In this video, we have learned about introduction to user-defined function and what are the different elements for writing a user-defined function with an example. Thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.